What happens when a CEO walks into his own business and gets treated like he doesn't belong? Paul Tanner stood outside the glass doors of the 7th location of his late father's dental clinic chain, pulling at the collar of his wrinkled button-up. His beard was thicker than usual, dyed a little gray, and his glasses added just enough to throw people off. He looked like a tired, average guy in his late 40s, far from the clean-cut executive who usually wore custom suits and sat in boardrooms. This clinic, located in a busy suburb outside Dallas, had sparked his curiosity. The numbers were fine on paper, but something felt off. Patients weren't returning. Staff turnover was high. And the reviews? Terrible. But no one could give him a straight answer. So he decided to see it for himself undercover. The company had grown fast since his dad passed away. 7 locations, over 100 employees, and he hadn't personally met half of them. The front desk receptionist here had started 6 months ago. Most of the team wouldn't recognize him. The disguise helped, but the distance he'd let grow between him and the floor-level operations helped more. He took a breath and stepped inside. The waiting room was clean but plain. A couple of patients sat quietly, scrolling on their phones. Behind the front desk sat a young woman, arms crossed, chewing gum like she was in a high school hallway. He approached the desk. "Hi there," Paul said, with a polite smile. "I'm here for the temp job, the trainee assistant position." She barely looked up. "Name?" "Phil Tanner." She rolled her eyes and tapped at her keyboard, then sighed. "Nobody told me about any trainee." "You sure you're in the right place?" "That's what the email said." "I was told to ask for the office manager." She leaned back in her chair, popped her gum loudly, and said, "Brenda's busy. You can sit and wait, I guess. But if you're just some walk-in trying to get a job, we don't hire off the street." Her tone wasn't just rude, it was dismissive, like she was annoyed someone even dared to speak to her. Paul blinked, caught off guard. "I'm not here off the street," he said. "I was scheduled." She didn't respond, just turned back to her phone. He sat down, jaw tight. That was strike one, but he let it go for now. 10 minutes later, Brenda, the office manager, stepped out. She was in her 40s, clearly tired but moving with purpose. She scanned the room, then walked over to him. "You Phil?" she asked. He stood. "Yes, ma'am." She gave him a once-over. "All right, come with me. I'll show you around real quick." He followed her past the front desk where the receptionist still didn't acknowledge him and into a narrow hallway lined with treatment rooms. "We're short-staffed," Brenda said as they walked. 2 assistants quit last month. One moved, the other just ghosted us. You'll shadow Lisa today. She's one of the best." Paul nodded. "Happy to help however I can." As they stepped into the back, the mood shifted. The air buzzed with activity. Lisa, a petite woman in her early 30s, greeted them with a tired smile. "Hey, Brenda. This the new guy?" "Yeah," Brenda said. "Train him like you trained me." Lisa laughed. "That means I get to boss you around, Phil." Paul smiled. "Looking forward to it." Lisa didn't waste time. She showed him where supplies were kept, how to prep rooms, and how to interact with patients. She was firm but kind, and even in just an hour, Paul saw how much weight she carried. She stayed calm when a kid cried, reassured nervous patients, and gently corrected a newer assistant without embarrassing her. "Do you always work this hard?" Paul asked during a quick break. Lisa wiped her forehead. "Someone has to. We're barely hanging on. Brenda does what she can, but front desk? Ugh, don't even get me started on her." "Really?" Paul asked, playing dumb. Lisa leaned in. "Brielle. She's been rude to patients, ignores calls, and always finds a way to disappear when we're swamped. Brenda's talked to her, but nothing changes. I just focus on my side." Paul frowned. He didn't say anything, but he was taking notes. Later that day, he finally witnessed it for himself. An older man in a wheelchair came in. Brielle was texting behind the desk. "Excuse me," he said. "I have a 1:30 appointment. My daughter dropped me off." Brielle cut him off. "We're running behind. Sit down. We'll call you. But I need to use the restroom and—" She looked up, annoyed. "Sir," I said, "sit down. You'll be fine." Paul stood nearby, stunned. No warmth. No empathy. just coldness. He stepped forward. I can help him, he offered. Brielle gave him a sharp look. You don't work front desk. Stay in your lane. The elderly man looked embarrassed. Paul helped him anyway, walking him to the restroom and making sure he was okay. When they returned, Lisa caught Paul's eye and mouthed, "Unreal." By the end of the day, Paul's mind was racing. Lisa was a rock. Brenda, overworked but trying. But Brielle? She set the tone when people walked in. And that tone was awful. Back in the break room, Paul sat across from Lisa. Do you like working here? He asked. She hesitated. I used to, but lately it's been hard. We're not listened to. Management doesn't really see us. Paul looked down. That one stung. He nodded slowly. Maybe that's about to change. Paul returned to the clinic the next morning before opening hours, slipping in through the back entrance where deliveries came in. Brenda had given him a keycard yesterday after his training, and now he stood in the break room sipping burnt coffee from a paper cup. Lisa arrived 10 minutes later, her hair tied up and eyes already scanning the schedule she'd printed. Looks like we've got a packed day, she said, not looking up. Dr. Harlan's got 4 crown placements before noon. We're short a hygienist again. Paul nodded. Anything I can prep ahead? She looked up, surprised by the question. Yeah. Set up rooms 2 and 3 with the sterilized trays. We've got a kid coming in first thing. You good with kids? He smiled, careful not to overdo it. I'll manage. By the time the first patient walked in, a nervous 8-year-old with his mom, Paul had already seen Brielle arrive. She didn't greet anyone, just slid behind the reception desk with a coffee and earbuds in. Her screen glowed with a video, volume turned low but not off. Nobody said anything. Paul watched Lisa glance toward the front, then back down at her tray. The first few hours flew past. Paul worked alongside Lisa, handing her tools, helping patients into chairs, wiping surfaces. He wasn't fast, but he was precise. Lisa noticed. You picked this up quick, she said between patients. Didn't think you had dental experience. I've seen a lot of dental offices, Paul replied vaguely. Different perspectives help. I'll say. You actually listen. Near noon, things started to unravel. A woman came in pushing a stroller, flustered and juggling a purse, insurance card, and a screaming toddler. She approached the front desk, politely asking if she could confirm her appointment time. Brielle didn't look up. You're late, she said flatly. The woman blinked. I thought it was at 11? It was at 10:45. You're over 10 minutes late. We charge a cancellation fee. I'm sorry. I had trouble finding parking. Not my problem. Paul was returning from the supply closet and caught the exchange. The woman's voice dropped. I can still wait if there's room. No. The system locks out your slot after 10 minutes, Brielle said, tapping her keyboard unnecessarily hard. You'll have to reschedule. Next available is 3 weeks out. The woman bit her lip, visibly trying to stay composed. She took her child's hand and walked out slowly. Paul moved toward the desk. That was a little rough, wasn't it? He asked, keeping his tone level. If they can't follow basic instructions, it's not on me, Brielle replied without turning. You could have explained it more gently. She was wasting my time. I don't get paid to babysit. Paul stared at her. Actually, you kind of do. Brielle's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? He didn't answer. Just walked away. Back in the break room, he found Lisa and Brenda hunched over her laptop. We're double booked at 2, Brenda muttered. I didn't catch it till just now. I'll have to move someone. Lisa rubbed her temples. I can't push back the root canal. The patient's been waiting 2 months. Brenda exhaled hard. Then I'll move the cleaning. Or do it myself if I have to. Paul waited a beat. Why not bring it up with regional? Ask for temp support? Brenda gave a tired laugh. I've filed 3 requests this month. Response time's slower than molasses. Plus, we're not hitting bonus targets, so they're tightening hours. Lisa didn't look up. Figures. Paul didn't push. He knew the budgeting process inside and out and how it punished clinics for the very struggles that caused underperformance in the first place. Later that afternoon, a man in his 20s came in with a cracked molar. He was in visible pain, holding his cheek, but trying to stay calm. Brielle didn't even glance up when he approached. "I have an emergency walk-in," he said. "I called earlier." She continued typing. "Yeah, we're full. I was told I could come in. I can wait." She finally looked up. "You can't just show up and expect to be seen. That's not how it works." "I'm not expecting anything," he said, voice tightening. "I'm just asking. There's nothing I can do." "We're at capacity." Paul walked up behind him and gently placed a hand on the man's shoulder. "I'll talk to the clinical team." "One moment." He turned and walked straight to Lisa. "Guy up front. He's in serious pain. Can we squeeze him in?" Lisa looked at the schedule. "If we hustle between rooms 2 and 4, maybe. Tell him it's a 40-minute wait minimum." Paul returned and gave the man the update. The relief on his face was immediate. Back at the desk, Brielle was scrolling through her phone again. "Was that necessary?" she muttered. "What do you think this place is for?" Paul asked. She didn't respond. By the time closing approached, the tension in the clinic was thick. Brenda sat in her office, rubbing her eyes. Lisa was cleaning instruments. Paul was restocking supplies in the back when he overheard a conversation between Brielle and another assistant, Monica, near the front. "She acts like she owns the place," Brielle said loud enough to carry. "Always fixing everyone's mess. Doesn't even have a degree." Monica kept her voice low. "She's just trying to help. We're all drowning." Brielle laughed dryly. "You mean she's trying to look good?" "Same thing." Paul stepped into the hallway silently. Monica saw him and quickly turned away. Brielle didn't notice. "I've been here longer than half of them," she continued. "But do they listen to me? No. They act like I'm just the girl at the desk." Paul spoke from behind her. "That might be because you treat patients like they're beneath you." She turned, startled. "Excuse me? You heard me. Who do you think you are, talking to me like that?" He stepped forward. "I'm the guy who's been watching you ignore patients, mock coworkers, and treat people like they're interruptions." Brielle straightened, arms crossed. "You're just some temp. You don't get to lecture me." Paul's voice didn't rise, but it sharpened. "I'm not a temp. My name is Paul Tanner. I own this company." The hallway froze. Brenda stepped out of her office. Lisa poked her head from the back. Even Monica looked stunned. Brielle blinked. "What?" "I came to see how this clinic really runs. Because I've been getting complaints. And now I know exactly why." She opened her mouth. Closed it again. "You've disrespected patients. You've created tension in this clinic. And I've seen no signs of empathy or accountability. That's not fair. You've had more than enough chances. You're done here. Effective immediately." Brenda stepped forward. "Paul, this isn't on you," Paul said. "You've been covering gaps with no support. That changes starting tomorrow." He turned to Lisa. "You've been carrying more than your share. That ends now too." Lisa looked stunned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you're getting a raise. And I'm transferring 2 floaters from the Plano clinic to support you here, starting next week." Lisa's eyes widened. Brenda looked like she might cry. Paul turned back to Brielle, who was still frozen. "You can collect your things and leave through the back. Security will deactivate your access by the end of the hour." She didn't speak, just stormed past him, grabbing her bag from under the desk. Paul stood in the hallway, silent for a moment. Then, "Let's meet in the break room. All of you. We've got some changes to make." The break room door clicked shut behind them. Lisa leaned against the counter, arms folded, still processing everything. Monica hovered near the fridge, silent. Brenda sat at the small table, her knees bouncing under the surface. Paul stood across from them, sleeves rolled up, his expression steady. "I owe all of you an apology," he said. "You've been working under pressure for months, and I didn't see it soon enough." Brenda gave a tired nod but didn't speak. Lisa looked at him, eyes narrowed not in anger, but with the cautious expression of someone who'd been promised change before and seen nothing happen. Paul continued, "I'm not going to pretend I can fix everything overnight, but the way this clinic has been operating isn't acceptable on any level. From staffing to support to the way people are being treated the moment they walk in the door." He paused. "I came here thinking I'd find a few inefficiencies, maybe some training gaps. What I found was a team doing their best under broken systems and leadership that wasn't reinforcing the right culture." Brenda finally spoke. "It's been like holding sand in a sieve. Every time we plug a hole, another opens. I've sent weekly reports. I've tried to keep morale up, but we're barely holding together by the end of each day." "You shouldn't have had to weather that alone," Paul said. "And Lisa, your work ethic, your instincts, your treatment of patients, those are exactly what this company was built on. I watched you for less than 2 days and I saw someone doing the job of 3 people without complaint. That's not sustainable. It's not fair." Lisa didn't blink. "So what now?" Paul looked at her. "You're not going to be left to carry this anymore. Starting Monday, we'll rotate in 2 assistants from our Carrollton and Garland locations. Both are trained and experienced. That'll give you breathing room." Monica looked up. "What about the front desk?" "Temporary coverage is being arranged. In the meantime, I'll be here. I'll handle intake personally tomorrow if I have to." Monica's eyebrows lifted. "You? I've done harder jobs." Lisa let out a quiet laugh, not mocking, just surprised. "All right then." Paul looked around. "I'll also be arranging a third-party audit of scheduling policies and patient flow. We need to understand what's breaking things down before we rebuild." Brenda shook her head. "If you want a list, I've got one going back to last quarter." "I do want it," Paul said. "But more than that, I want to hear what's not on the reports." Lisa looked at Monica, then back at Paul. "You sure you're ready for that?" He nodded. Lisa pushed off the counter. "All right. For starters, there's a culture problem. Not just here. Across the clinics. People at the top don't talk to those doing the work. And when we do speak up, it feels like shouting into a well." "You heard what Brielle said, right? She thought she was invisible and instead of stepping up, she lashed out. That's not rare. It's just usually quieter." Paul nodded once. "That's on me." Brenda added, "We've got good people. They're just tired. And when patients get treated like numbers, it breaks everything down. They don't come back. They don't trust us. And we're the ones left cleaning up the mess." Monica spoke up quietly. "I've been thinking about quitting for weeks. I love the job, but the atmosphere at the front desk, it felt toxic. Like I had to walk on eggshells every shift." "You won't have to anymore," Paul said. "But I'm not just removing a bad piece and calling it fixed. I want to rebuild this place into something better. That means new training, new expectations, and actual support. Not just words." Lisa narrowed her eyes. "And what happens when you leave again?" "I won't," Paul said. "Not in the way I did before. I've let this company grow faster than I stayed connected to it. That ends here. I'm setting up monthly unannounced visits to each clinic, and not as the CEO. Just as a guy helping out. No notice. No special treatment." Brenda looked skeptical. "You really think you'll keep that up?" "I have to," he said. "Otherwise, I'm running a company I don't understand. And frankly, I'm not willing to do that anymore." They fell quiet for a moment. Then Lisa said, "All right. I'll believe it when I see it." "You will," Paul said simply. The next morning, Paul arrived early again. No disguise this time. He wore a plain polo and slacks. Still casual, still approachable, but no longer hiding. By 8:20, he was at the front desk, answering phones and confirming insurance while Brenda reviewed the day's appointments. No one questioned his presence. The patients who walked in were met with warmth, clarity, and a sense of calm that hadn't existed there just 48 hours ago. At 9:30, a mother arrived with her teenage son. She looked uncertain, clutching paperwork. Paul stood to greet her. "Good morning. Here for an appointment." She glanced at the desk, surprised to see someone standing. "Yes. For my son, Marcus. Let me check you in." "While I do that, would you like some water or coffee?" She blinked. Sure. Water would be great. Monica stepped in from the hallway, catching the moment. She gave Paul a nod, not overly warm, but approving. Later, between patients, Lisa passed by the front and paused. "You're not terrible at this," she said. "I try. You keep this up, you'll ruin your reputation as a distant executive." Paul smiled. "That's the idea." Later that afternoon, Paul stepped into Brenda's office. She was on a call but waved him in. When she hung up, she leaned back in her chair. "You know you're going to get pushback from the other clinics, right?" "I'm counting on it," he said. "That's how I'll know we're shaking the right trees." She smiled, exhausted but satisfied. "Well, I've got a staff meeting scheduled tomorrow. Want to join? I'll be here." She stood. "Then let's make it count." That evening, as the last patient left and the clinic began to wind down, Paul walked through every hallway, one last time. He watched Lisa go over charts with precision. He saw Monica laughing with a hygienist, something he hadn't seen her do all day before. Brenda was already back at her desk, reviewing scheduling notes. The air felt lighter, not fixed, not healed, but lighter. He didn't say goodbye, just nodded at each of them, stepped outside into the dusk, and made a quiet promise to himself. Never again would the people on the ground floor of his company feel unseen, and they wouldn't have to wait long to see that promise kept. The following week began with gray skies and steady rain tapping against the windows of the clinic. Paul arrived just after 7, stepping inside with a clipboard under his arm and no umbrella. His shirt clung to his side, but he didn't seem to care. He greeted the janitor by name and made his way toward the back, where Brenda was already at her desk, sorting a stack of HR forms. She glanced up. "You're early. I figured I'd help with onboarding." She slid a packet across the desk. "Both floaters from Garland and Carrollton confirmed. One's already here. The other called she's running late because of the weather." Brenda leaned back in her chair. "Hard to believe it's only been a week." Paul sat across from her. "It's been a long one." Brenda folded her arms. "I've been thinking about the staff meeting. You said you wanted to start with feedback." "I do." "You sure about that? You might not like what you hear." "I'm counting on that." At 8:15, the team gathered in the break room again. This time, nobody looked unsure about why they were there. Monica stood near the sink, arms relaxed. Lisa leaned against the wall, sipping coffee. The new assistant, a tall woman with auburn hair and a quiet, focused demeanor, stood beside Brenda. Her name was Rachel. She'd worked at the Garland Clinic for 3 years. Paul stood by the doorway, waiting for the room to settle. "All right," he began. "Let's talk about the next phase." Lisa set her coffee down. "Before we do, can I say something?" Paul nodded. "I've seen a few changes in the last few days that I didn't think were possible. But I don't want this to be a one-week fix. I want to know what happens after the dust settles." Paul crossed his arms. "That's fair. My goal isn't to patch this place up and walk away. We're setting up internal liaisons, one clinical, one admin at each location. People who can report directly to me or our senior ops team. No filters. No bottlenecks." Monica raised her hand slightly. "Who decides who those liaisons are?" "You do," Paul said. "The staff votes. Not management. It's a rotating position, 6 months at a time. That way no one stays too long and everyone gets a shot." Rachel spoke for the first time. "Do we get training for that?" "You will. We're developing a short leadership series for it now. It'll be done by the end of the quarter." Brenda raised an eyebrow. "And what about hiring?" "We've been waiting on an approved requisition for a new hygienist for over a month. You'll have it by tomorrow," Paul said. "And going forward, clinic managers get authority to approve one frontline hire per month. No corporate delay. You'll still run background checks and onboarding through HR, but you won't be stuck waiting for someone in finance to greenlight a basic position." Lisa leaned forward slightly. "What about patient complaints? We've had people walk out because of scheduling issues or long waits, and it feels like we don't get any support when they do. We're changing the process there too," Paul said. "We'll be implementing patient experience trackers. Every clinic gets a report card, response time, satisfaction scores, follow through. But that data won't just be used to punish. It'll be used to reward. Bonuses will be tied to improvements, not just perfect scores." Rachel nodded slowly. That might actually work. A knock came at the break room door. Another assistant stepped in, soaked from the rain, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. This was Kayla, the second floater. Brenda gave her a quick wave and motioned her in. Paul turned back to the room. Changes are already underway, but I want to hear what you need that hasn't been mentioned yet. Kayla looked around, unsure whether to speak. Monica gestured to her. Go ahead. Kayla cleared her throat. I just transferred out of a clinic where the manager wouldn't let assistants talk directly to the doctor. Everything had to go through her. It slowed everything down and made us feel like we couldn't speak up. Paul's voice stayed calm. That won't happen here. Every team member has the right to speak directly to any clinical professional. That's not negotiable. Lisa added, and what about accountability? What happens when someone like Brielle slips through again? Paul didn't hesitate. We've updated our incident reporting process. Any patient-facing staff who receives multiple verified complaints for rudeness, neglect, or misconduct will be removed from front-line duties while it's investigated. That includes receptionists, assistants, even managers. Brenda looked at him. Is that policy company-wide? As of this morning, yes. Rachel spoke again. We've had issues at Garland too. Not as visible, but same root problem. People who think patients are the disruption, not the purpose. Paul nodded. Then it's time we fix our hiring filters too. We're redesigning the interview rubrics. Behavioral screening will now include patient scenario questions. If someone can't answer with empathy, they don't get hired. Lisa raised an eyebrow. What if they fake it? Then training will catch it. And if not training, then we will. But we're done giving the benefit of the doubt to people who don't treat others with basic decency. The room fell quiet for a moment. Not tense, just thoughtful. Brenda stood. I think we're ready to get back to work. Paul looked around. One last thing. I meant what I said about staying connected. I'll be visiting clinics monthly, unannounced. Sometimes I'll shadow. Sometimes I'll work. But I'll be here. Not watching. Participating. Lisa picked up her coffee again. Guess we'd better keep the place clean, then. Paul smiled. Or just real. By noon, the clinic was moving in rhythm. Rachel had taken over chairside duties in room 2, jumping in without hesitation. Kayla handled intake with Brenda's help, learning the software quickly and asking questions when needed. Paul stayed out of the way, tidying and used stations and observing as the team adapted. The mood had shifted not to perfection, but to something closer to trust. While Lisa prepped a patient for a filling, she asked, You sticking around the rest of the day? I'll head out after the last patient, Paul said. Need to check in with the other locations. Lisa nodded. Then, quieter, thanks for not just talking about change. He looked at her. Thanks for holding the line until it got here. At 5:40, the last chart was closed. Brenda shut down her monitor with a sigh. Kayla packed her things, ready to head back to Garland in the morning. Rachel lingered, helping Monica restock trays. Paul stood at the front desk, watching the last patient walk out with a smile. The air in the clinic felt different now, not because everything was fixed, but because the people inside it believed it could be. As Lisa walked past him toward the locker room, she paused. Don't take this the wrong way, she said. But I hope I don't see you again next week. Paul grinned. That's fair. She headed out, leaving him alone near the door. He stood there for a moment, listening to the quiet hum of the closing clinic. Then he turned off the lights, locked the front, and stepped into the rain. Not to disappear, but to do it all again somewhere else.